Lord of Mystery. The Return of the Stars Chapter 251-260. East Tucker County is close to the capital Backland and has a relatively prosperous coastline. The overall economic level is very good and the daily security is relatively stable. But today, a steam train from Backland exploded at the train station, killing and injuring hundreds of passengers. Among them, an Earl disappeared mysteriously. This made the entire Eastern Tucker County Police Department, Nighthawks, Punishers, and Heart of Machine members busy. Cresty Sesama no longer hides his identity. As one of the three giants of the Red Gloves, he takes over the local Nighthawks team and is also responsible for coordinating this incident. Working from early morning to dusk, he got the information he wanted. All statistics have been completed. A total of 42 people died and 90 were injured in this incident. The whereabouts of a total of 12 people are currently a mystery. The identities of these 12 people have also been investigated, namely Maury Lahan, Rhea John, Hasta Campbell. Cresty Sesama listened to the report silently, and then asked the local police station to start investigating the whereabouts of these people, but don't be too cautious, just know where they're hiding. A few kilometers away from the train station, there is a luxury hotel on North Street. On the second floor, in a large and luxurious room, Hastur was standing in front of the window, looking at the police officers patrolling the street. Meow. Azishara walked along the window and lay down in front of the window, staring outside, occasionally sweeping her little tail, which had a small tuft of singed hair on it. When the train exploded, Hastur took a slight risk in order to keep the escort team in the sea of fire. The price was that Azishara's tail was almost burned by the fire, but fortunately, only a small amount of hair was burned by the high temperature. As for the goods on the carriage, Hastur didn't care much. He had already carried all his belongings worth £500,000 with him. The things on the carriage were all daily necessities, nothing too valuable. After quietly leaving the train station, Hastur took a carriage and came to this hotel to check in. He also deliberately concealed his identity to avoid being discovered. Now that the track from East Tucker County to South Wales has been damaged, it will take a lot of time to completely repair it. After planning to purchase some things in East Tucker County, he will secretly go to South Wales. Miss Sharon, do you need to buy anything? Need not. Then take a rest tonight and set off tomorrow. Okay. After Hastur finished speaking to Sharon in the mirror, he left the room and went to the next room on the right. He had just opened 2 rooms, which was more convenient for Sharon. It's night, around 9 o'clock. Ince Zangwil found a suitable place to live, a B&B, which was not expensive and was hidden deep in a small alley. There was only a small square table on the desk, and there was an oil lamp that was obviously behind the times. The notebook was opened in the dim light, and a pen began to automatically write a paragraph. Ince Zangwil's luck is as bad as ever. This time he seems to be attracted by some force. No matter how he wants to change the direction, he will eventually converge to the source of destiny. That Baron Hasta Campbell, oh, he is already an earl. He did not die in the big explosion and escaped. He seems to be planning to go to South Wales secretly. This choice coincides with Ince Zangwil. Will they meet on the road? And what kind of story will happen? It's hard to see clearly. Strange, why do I pay special attention to Earl Hasta Campbell? Am I also affected by some kind of power? I'm really curious. Unfortunately, Ince Zangwil is too timid and has never been willing to have direct contact with the other party. This makes it impossible for the future I predicted to come accurately. Ince Zangwil looked at these paragraphs silently, holding up a pen and wanting to write on them. Ince Zangwil and that Earl Hasta Campbell have no intersection at all. The fate is always staggered. But after thinking about it, he still put down the 008 in his hand without writing a single symbol in the diary. He still remembered the lesson from Backland last time. The more scripts you write about Count Hasta Campbell, the more likely you are to be criticized, which will increase your chances of meeting him. Letting it go and turning a blind eye is a better way to deal with it. Late at night, Ince Zangwil, who was still asleep, suddenly received a spiritual warning. He opened his eyes and climbed out of bed, quickly taking 008 in his diary with him. Opened the window and jumped directly from the window. He was on the 2nd floor. He quickly landed in the alley and left the place along the intricate alleyway. Being wanted for many years, he has developed the ability to leave at a moment's notice. As long as there is something abnormal spiritually, he will leave. Sure enough, 3 to 5 minutes later, Crested Sesama led a team of Nighthawks to the B&B and conducted a search and verification. It was determined that Ria John was the false identity of Ince Zangwill. Unfortunately, they arrived a step too late, and Ince Zangwill had already left early. Well, Crestal Sessima sighed. With 008 in his body, Ince Zangwill's spiritual warning ability was too strong. As long as there was something that might threaten him, he could basically sense it in advance and then run away. At this point, Ince Zangwill is more difficult to deal with than those demons. Keep searching, don't miss any suspicious place. Cresty Sessima could only chase Ince Zangwill all the way like this. In this regard, they are indeed like hounds. At this time, Ince Zangwill had gone out of the alley and headed directly to the dock with his memory of the day. He had to catch the first ferry tomorrow to leave East Tucker County, then get off the ship in Southwold County, and then transfer from Southwold County to the South Continent. At the dock, the ferry has not yet departed. It will take until 7:30 tomorrow for the first ferry to set sail. Ince Zangwill changed his fake identity again and bought a ticket to Southwold County. In order not to attract attention, he deliberately chose the lowest priced ticket from the 4 tickets. In this way, he can blend in with the crowd and hide from the Red Gloves members. He followed several passengers who also came to buy tickets in advance and temporarily squeezed into a cabin on the ferry, resting while waiting for the fish belly to turn white in the sky. As the morning approached, more and more passengers squeezed into the ferry. The already narrow cabin was like a can of sardines produced in a factory. Ince Zangwill lived in a small bed that only allowed one person to lie down, and it was difficult to even turn over. In a cabin, there were 3 layers of small beds, divided into 2 rows and 5 columns, with a total of 30 small beds. There were small beds in front, behind, left and right. This almost airtight situation made him feel more at ease. Although the smell of sweat that kept pouring into his mouth and nose, as well as the stuffy environment, was unbearable. But he still endured it. When he arrived in the South Continent, he no longer had to worry about exposing his identity. The time soon came to 7:30, and the first ferry began to set sail from the dock and headed for South Wales. The not-so-calm sea shook the hull, and the hull shook the already crowded cabin. People were like weeds, shaking on the small beds, making a creaking sound. Some people were so dizzy that they vomited directly in the cabin, making the entire cabin even more smelly. In a luxurious single room, Hastur was sitting by the window, tasting the captain's private collection of red wine and food, while watching the red sun rising from the sea. Last night, he dealt with 2 little mice who followed him secretly. In order not to be affected, he chose to take the first ferry today to South Wales. He used 10 times the price of an ordinary ticket to ask the captain for a luxurious single room, and gave him 10 gold pounds in exchange for some food and wine. He is now more and more skilled in enjoying life. He will not treat himself badly to buy any ordinary ticket, especially the lowest priced ticket. Even if he is locked up in prison, it is better than the environment there. It takes about 7 days for this ferry to arrive in South Wales. It is a difficult problem to eat, drink, defecate, urinate and sleep in the place where the ticket is. That situation is only a little better than when slaves were transported on the sea. Hastur will not let Azishara and Sharon suffer with him. Meow? Azishara squatted by the window, looking at the unknown seafish jumping up from time to time on the sea, waving her little paws constantly, very greedy. Want to eat? Meow? Azishara turned around, came to Hastur, and rubbed his cheek flatteringly. Hastur skillfully used the magic of the gold pound to ask the crew to bring 3 fishing rods, one of which was given to Azishara. He asked for one, and the other fishing rod was given to Sharon. Meow? Azishara looked down at her little paws, and then looked at the fishing rod that was several times longer than her body, and was very distressed. Sharon came out of the mirror, came to the window, grabbed 2 fishing rods with one hand, fished casually, and stroked Azishara's little head with one hand. Meow. Azishara lay obediently in front of Sharon, her eyes fixed on the float of the fishing rod. Splash! It was the sound of a big fish being caught out of the water. Azishara looked over in the direction of the sound, and it was its owner who had a harvest. The fish was huge, several times bigger than its body, with sharp teeth and a thin mouth, and a row of silver thorns on its back. It didn't like this kind of fish, so it retracted its gaze and waited quietly for its small fish to be hooked. Splash! Another big fish was caught out of the water by its owner. Azishara raised her eyes, looked at Sharon with an expressionless face, and made a puzzled meow. What it wanted to express was simple: why couldn't these 2 fishing rods catch any fish? What went wrong? Sharon didn't answer, but her eyes became deeper. Fishing is a very metaphysical thing, especially when you have studied the techniques of bait, water area, fishing location, etc. You can understand the importance of metaphysics more. Hasta glanced at Sharon with his peripheral vision, and said nothing. After putting on the bait, he swung the fishing rod line and continued to close his eyes and began to fish. After a while, he caught another fish. The long fish body was a bit like a hairtail, with no thorns on the spine and a light red body. Meow! Ashera was excited all of a sudden. It had no immunity to this fish and was too greedy. It secretly glanced at Sharon again, and then at the motionless float, and took small steps towards Hasta. Halfway through the walk, a hand wrapped around the waist. It was Sharon. Although she didn't speak, Ashera could understand that this was her last stubbornness. It glanced, stopped, turned around and accompanied Sharon. It could still tell whether there was fish to eat for one meal or fish to eat for every meal. On the other side, Hasta unhooked the hooked fish, knocked it unconscious, and threw it in front of Ashera. Ashera stretched out her little paw, pushed it away a little, and rubbed Sharon's palm with her cheek. Tisk, getting smarter and smarter, she knows how to read people's expressions. Hasta was still very satisfied with Azishera's wisdom. She was smart and restrained, which was conducive to her future promotion. Near lunch, the two fishing rods in Sharon's hand moved, and the float sank. Without Azishera's meow to remind her, Sharon shook her wrist and picked up the fishing rod. Well, it was a water grass, very lush. I'll go out to the deck to take a look. Hasta held back his smile and consciously left for a short time. Sharon didn't say anything, but silently threw the fishing rod onto the sea again. After Hasta left for a few minutes, the two fishing rods in Sharon's hands had a harvest at the same time. Meow! Azishara made an excited sound, and she couldn't wait to enjoy the little fish. Sharon stroked Azishara's little head, as if thinking about something. On the bow deck, the arrival of Hasta made the captain, who was also fishing for leisure, very happy and invited him to taste sashimi. Hasta was not interested in this. He just picked up a plate of grilled fish and a plate of seafood platter, and then gave the captain a tip of 5 gold pounds. After returning to his luxurious single room with food, Hasta saw Sharon catch a big fish weighing more than 10 kilograms, and then looked at Ashera who was eating with a bulging belly. Thinking, Miss Sharon's fishing luck has improved? Hasta closed the door and put the delicious food on the dining table. The aroma made Ashera eager to move. When Hasta picked up the fishing rod again, Sharon had not caught a single fish. Near dusk, under the threat of Sharon's eyes, Hasta had already given up fishing and handed all 3 fishing rods to Sharon. The harvest was great, one fish after another, and 2 large buckets were already filled. At this time, a small black dot appeared in the distance where the sea and the sky met. The small black dot kept rushing towards this position at a very fast speed. It was a fleet. The flagship at the head is very famous in this sea, the ghost ship Black Emperor. Something happened. Sharon gave up fishing and looked at the fleet with vigilance. Hasta also came over and looked at the unexpected guest. Nastor Solomon, the king of the 5 seas, a descendant of the Solomon royal family, a powerful Beander, has a bounty worth 800,000 gold pounds. This is also a very tempting fortune, but unfortunately, the king of the 5 seas is very powerful and is a sequence 3 mad mage of the Black Emperor path. Although Hasta was tempted, considering the reality, he temporarily gave up this tempting idea. Such bad luck. Hasta heard Sharon complain in a low voice, turned sideways, looked at her and said, "The reputation of this king of the 5 seas is not bad. He treats captives well and usually only robs money but does not kill people. Pirates are pirates after all. Maybe he just happened to pass by. This possibility is very low. Hide in the mirror first to avoid being discovered." The result is the same. Sharon was not optimistic about this encounter. She had a hunch that this king of the 5 seas came specifically for this ship. "Don't worry, I think we should all survive." Hasta had some guesses about the arrival of Nast Solomon. It should be the influence of the Black Emperor's blasphemy card. "Are you sure?" "Yes, leave it to me." Hasta signaled Sharon that she could hide in the mirror. Those pirates were not good things. A beautiful and delicate girl like Sharon would be very dangerous if she fell into their hands. "Be careful." Sharon's figure floated into the mirror and disappeared. Azishara also knew that something big had happened and meowed softly. "Don't worry, I'm here for everything." Hasta put away the mirror on the table and placed it on his chest, then picked up Azishara and closed the window. Asta had at least 3 solutions to this unexpected incident. First, Will gave him 2 fate charms that could change a certain fate before he left. Now Will has not been reincarnated, but his strength is a genuine sequence 1, so the things he gave him must be exquisite. Second, he could hold a ceremony to summon a messenger and dig out Sharon's teacher from the spirit world. He had not tried this, but with his special characteristics, once he held the ceremony to summon a messenger, he would definitely attract powerful creatures from the spirit world. Third, he had the Black Emperor's blasphemy card that Nast desired, and he would not choose this solution unless it was absolutely necessary. If it really didn't work, he could also enter the Hall of Stars and call Bernadette. Bernadette, who had been promoted to Sequence 2, could definitely scare away the King of the Five Seas. Now, let's see how many shameful and mysterious people are hiding on this ferry. This is the first ferry to leave East Tucker County after the steam train explosion, and there must be many extraordinary people hiding there. Ince Zangwill, who had gradually become accustomed to the stench of the cabin, began to warn spiritually that a powerful extraordinary person was approaching here. He immediately got up from his cot and went to the bow deck in the name of going to the bathroom. Looking at the approaching pirate fleet in the distance, his eyelids twitched twice. Nast Solomon, the King of the Five Seas, is very powerful and is suspected to be Sequence 3. Encountering pirates on the sea, and it was the fleet of the King of the Five Seas, he really felt that his luck was very bad recently. Should he take self-help measures or let it develop naturally? Ince Zangwill was a little hesitant. With the power of 008, he could temporarily transfer the King of the Five Seas, or cause an accident and scare him away. But this would increase the risk of exposing his identity. Who knows if there are any powerful people hiding on this ferry? The captain was already as anxious as an ant on a hot pot, and his mind was horrified. That was the fleet of the King of the Five Seas. Not to mention a ferry, even the kingdom's armored fleet might not be able to resist. The bounty of 800,000 gold pounds is a proof of his strong strength. The only thing he can expect now is to stay alive. When the ferry was within a certain distance from the fleet of the King of the Five Seas, it stopped on its own initiative, and a flag of willingness to surrender was still hung high on the mast. This is the only way to survive. The ferry's hull is so hard that it can't withstand a round of bombardment. The passengers on the ship were in turmoil, but in the face of the huge gap in strength, this turmoil was short-lived. The captain had already led some people to stand at the bow, bowing his head respectfully. The ghost ship Black Emperor, a special flagship that can travel through the spirit world, is said to be a legacy left by the Solomon Empire, and has all kinds of incredible abilities. The fleet led by the Black Emperor came in a mighty manner and stopped about half a mile away from the ferry. On the bow deck of the Black Emperor, a burly figure whose face could not be seen was scanning everything on the ferry with a pair of sharp eyes. In the end, the figure retracted his gaze and ignored the small ferry. The Black Emperor slightly deviated from the course, and when the two ships were about to pass each other, a cannon on the ferry suddenly fired a cannonball. This was to deal with the weapons equipped by the small pirates, a total of only 4. The roar sounded, but it could not hurt the Black Emperor at all, just a lot of water splashed around it. The lethality was not great, but it was very insulting. Who ordered the cannon to fire? Which damn bastard was it? The captain roared wildly, his heart was cold, and he finally managed to survive this disaster, but there were complications. A small ferry dared to fire at the fleet of the King of the Five Seas? This is a feat that is enough to be recorded in the annals of history. And the only price they paid was to become this piece of history. The captain now just wanted to find the bastard who fired the cannon, and torture him to death before he died. This sudden change made the passengers on the ship completely crazy and desperate. Ince Zangwill's face was ashen. Who was calculating this ferry? He actually made a dirty move at this time. This is to make the whole ferry buried with this. No matter how magnanimous the King of the Five Seas is, he can't forgive a ferry that dares to fire at him. Not to mention, there is a huge pirate fleet behind him. Given the brutality of those pirates, everyone on this ferry will die miserably today. Welcome to Fanfic Audiobook, your go-to place for immersive audiobooks. If you enjoy the content, don't forget to like the video and subscribe to our channel for more amazing stories. Chapter 253 Goodbye. Hasta and Ince Zangwill. This shell made Nast, who was standing on the bow deck, fall silent. The small ferry, except for its larger carrying capacity, was not comparable to his fleet in other aspects. The gap between the two was like that between an ant and an elephant. I just passed by here accidentally, and I didn't come here specifically for this ferry. I just glanced at it casually just now. If I didn't find anything unusual, I would leave. After all, this was still a coastal location. But this small ferry, which he didn't take seriously, fired directly at him. Is it because the operator was under too much psychological pressure that this kind of oolong happened? Or did he really dare to attack his fleet with a ferry? Stupidity or courage? He didn't need to think so much, and even without his order, his fleet had dispersed and surrounded the ferry. Soon, the captain of the ferry came to him tremblingly. Before he spoke, the captain knelt down with a plop. He trembled all over and explained what had just happened with tears in his eyes. A sailor who was responsible for operating the cannonball had his hand tilted due to too much psychological pressure, which led to the provocative scene just now. The captain had brought the sailor over, a very ordinary young man, with a pale face, trembling and kneeling behind the captain. Such an ordinary young man obviously did not have the courage to provoke him, nor did he fit the image that could be recorded in history. The matter was already very clear, this was just a coincidence caused by enough psychological pressure. But he was not a fair and selfless judge, but a pirate king who roamed the seas, the king of the 5 seas. Although he liked to show his elegant and generous image as a descendant of the Solomon Empire, some things could not be allowed to be transgressed. Although this was an accident, in the eyes of outsiders, this was a provocation, and this reason was enough. He did not speak, but just waved his hand, letting the ferry captain kneel and kowtow, tears streaming down. His crew members understood and dragged the ferry captain and the young gunner who caused such a sensation away. At this time, the controlled ferry fired another cannonball. This time the cannonball landed firmly on the deck of the Black Emperor, although it had no effect. This is a ghost ship left by the Solomon Empire, and it cannot be destroyed by such small artillery fire. The successive provocations made Nast's eyes reflect thinking, and he decided to go and see for himself. His men had laid wooden boards between the Black Emperor and the ferry so that they could walk freely. Nast walked across the wooden boards and came to the deck of the ferry. As far as he could see, all the passengers were trembling, and some of them were already crying. The third mate came to report that he had not found the person who fired the second cannonball. Since it was not an ordinary person, it might be an extraordinary person. Perhaps the 2 acts of firing cannonballs were a provocation from an extraordinary person to him. Nast did not speak, but just casually added a few rules to the ferry, prohibiting teleportation, concealment, disguise, etc. At his level of strength, the Black Emperor path can also exert similar abilities to the Judge path. Bring out all the passengers inside one by one. Nest gave his first order. He wanted to check every passenger on the ferry one by one to see who was provoking him. Under his own eyes, he didn't believe that anyone could hide their true identity. In the cabin, Inz Zangwill, who was mixed in the crowd, saw the situation develop like this, and his face was as gloomy as ink. Just now, he didn't even know who secretly fired the second shell. This was to force the passengers on the entire ferry to a dead end. Inz Zangwill came to the bathroom alone and locked the bathroom door. He was still thinking about whether to expose himself. He knew that as long as he made a move, the king of the 5 seas would definitely notice it. Everything here is now under his watch. Bang, bang, bang. Someone knocked hard on the bathroom door, disturbing Inz Zangwill's thinking. Please, let us hide here for a while. Woo, I really don't want to die, those people are all pirates. Inz Zangwill finally opened the door, and outside the door were 2 passengers with pale faces, looking back at the deck from time to time. Thank you so much, as long as we can survive, I will definitely repay your generosity today. Inz Zangwill did not answer, and left the bathroom to them as they kept thanking him. After about 2 minutes, he saw the 2 people being dragged out of the bathroom by the pirates and beaten. Listen to me, line up, go to the deck one by one in order, and accept the inspection of our captain. If anyone dares to make trouble again, don't blame us for not treating the prisoners well. The 4th officer of the Black Emperor stood in front of the crowd, his eyes like a venomous snake, looking around at everyone here. Inz Zangwill was also pushed and squeezed into a queue. He stood in his position and kept looking at the passengers queuing here with his peripheral vision. The extraordinary person who dared to challenge the king of the five seas must be among them. But even in the face of this situation, that person still chose to hide his identity. He glanced around and found several extraordinary people. They were all uneasy about the situation in front of them. Because of fear, they chose to obey the arrangements like ordinary passengers and had no intention of resisting. After all, they were not in a desperate situation. They still held hope. A hint of sarcasm appeared on the corner of Ince Zangwil's mouth. Since no one wanted to stand out, he could also endure to the end. Having made a decision in his heart, Ince Zangwil deduced the possible direction of the next story and the escape route suitable for him. The passengers in the cabin were called to the deck one by one. When the number of people in the queue became smaller and smaller, Ince Zangwil's peripheral vision caught a glimpse of the last person standing at the back of the team. He had never greeted that person face to face, but he had seen his portrait and knew his origins. Hasta Campbell. A mysterious person that even 008 was afraid of, and he was actually on the same ship with him. If it weren't for the accident today, he might not have known that Hasta Campbell was hiding on the ship when he got off the ship in South Wales. Sure enough, once I come into contact with his affairs, my luck will get worse. Did he cause all these things today? Also, why is he at the end of the team? Ince Zangwil began to have a bad premonition in his heart. The closer you are to the front, the easier it is for you to see the king of the five seas, and the faster you will expose your identity. Being at the end of the team is the most advantageous position. Will he recognize my identity? Ince Zangwil's heart skipped a beat, and his bad premonition became stronger. At this time, a scream came from outside. A Sequence 7 navigator extraordinary wanted to snatch a lifeboat and escape from here, but was caught and torn to pieces by the third officer of the Black Emperor on the spot. The bloody and cruel scene made the other extraordinary tremble with fear, and they dared not resist anymore, and could only accept the humiliating scrutiny from all sides. The team moved forward a distance, and Ince Zangwil could already see what was happening on the deck. The passengers leaving the cabin were divided into two groups. One group was ordinary passengers, and the other group was Beyonders who hid their identities. At this moment, 6 Beyonders have been picked out. In front of a Sequence 3 strongman, they were like cattle and sheep waiting to be slaughtered. Soon, it was Ince Zangwil's turn. He walked out of the cabin with a gloomy face, came to the deck, and walked in front of the king of the five seas. This king, who was said to have roamed the sea for the first time, did not show any signs of old age, but was in his prime. His figure was not as tall and burly as he looked from a distance, but the pressure he gave people was extremely thrilling. Tell me your origins honestly. The person who spoke was the second mate of the Black Emperor. Ince Zangwil. Ince Zangwil honestly reported his name. He had thought about deceiving at first, but in front of a Sequence 3 who was the Black Emperor, he wanted to deceive the other party. He believed that even with the help of 008, he could not do it. I've heard of you. Nast's eyes deliberately stayed on Ince Zangwil for a while. The defected Archbishop of the Church of the Goddess of Night successfully escaped the pursuit and came all the way to the sea. He is already a well-known figure in the extraordinary world. Have you ever thought about escaping? On the sea? I don't think my 2 legs can be faster than this Black Emperor. Nast nodded and asked him to stay aside first, not caring about the possible sudden attack of Ince Zangwil. Ince Zangwil stood with the other 6 extraordinary people who were caught. An extraordinary person next to him gave him a sharp look. The members of the Red Gloves team also sent people to chase him to the sea. Ince Zangwil ignored his resentful and angry eyes. He just wanted to see how Hasta Campbell got through the hurdle in front of him. Fewer and fewer people came out of the cabin, except for one extraordinary person. The others were ordinary passengers. Soon, Hasta, who was at the end of the team, also appeared on the deck. Hasta Campbell, from Backland, wants to go to South Wales to build his own territory. Nest's eyes swept over Hasta, and then looked at Azishara hiding in his arms. Your cat is very good. Thank you for the compliment, it is my best partner on this journey. Nest said nothing more, let Hasta stand on the side of ordinary passengers. Seeing this scene, Ince Zangwil's mouth twitched slightly. He would never believe that this Hasta Campbell was an ordinary passenger. But why didn't even the King of the Five Seas discover his secret? Secret. The secret authority from the Goddess of Night. Ince Zangwil quickly guessed the reason for this scene. 008 had mentioned this before, and even suspected that Hasta Campbell was a follower of the Night. Now it seems that this possibility is very high. Of course, There is another possibility. Hasta Campbell has something to do with the King of the Five Seas in front of him, so he deliberately pretended that he didn't find anything? Ince Zangwill had many guesses in his mind, but he did not choose to stand up and expose Hasta's identity. He kept watching quietly. No one came out of the cabin anymore. Nast looked at the cabin. The entire Black Emperor suddenly flashed with black light, and the black light net completely covered the entire cabin. Then, the entire cabin turned into powder under the huge force, and the entire ferry was left with only a bare deck. There are always some people who think they are smarter than others, thinking that as long as they hide and don't show up, they will be fine. After dealing with those smart people, Nast retracted his gaze and looked at the 7 extraordinary people he had picked out. Give me a reason to live. I believe in the Lord of Storms. Aren't you afraid of offending the Church of Storms on the sea? Stupid. Nast gave him a suitable evaluation, and with a light tap of his finger, the man's body began to rot, starting from his feet. He could still wail, but he could only wail. In front of the King of the Five Seas, his power was too insignificant. Finally, there was a neat set of bones on the deck. Respected King of the Five Seas, I am willing to join your fleet and become your weapon to gallop across the sea. Your heart is not sincere. Nast also gave this person death, and there was another neat set of bones on the deck. I am willing to offer all my wealth, just asking the great King of the Five Seas to give me a way to live. Your wealth is too insignificant to me. The painful wail was staged again. Whether intentionally or unintentionally, Ince Zangwill and another extraordinary person became the last 2 extraordinary people who had not answered the question. Hastur, who was standing on the other side, hugged Azishara, with a slight smile on his face, looking at the 2 familiar faces opposite. Ince Zangwill and Morley Abraham. As things developed to this point, the situation was clear. The person who had just provoked Nast was one of the 2 of them. Hastur personally believed that it was Morley Abraham, a believer of the fallen mother goddess, who was always crazy and terrible. For Ince Zangwill, who wanted to escape to the southern continent, he would not do anything to attract Nast's attention. It's your turn. Nast's tone was neither hurried nor slow, and he was not worried at all that they could escape from him. When I decided to do this, I knew that I had no way to survive today. It was too difficult to escape from the powerful King of the Five Seas. Morley Abraham said, but his eyes were always fixed on Hastur, with cruelty and madness in his eyes. Wise King of the Five Seas, there is something you may not know yet? Hasta Campbell, who is standing opposite you and is classified as an ordinary passenger, is a believer of the stars. He is also an extraordinary person, and is on the same extraordinary path as you. He will definitely be your mortal enemy in the future. Morley Abraham directly revealed Hasta's identity, and his words were all about persuading Nast to kill Hasta. Ince Zangwill, who had a blank expression on his face, was secretly happy in his heart. He didn't want Hasta to stay out of it, but he didn't dare to offend Hasta unless it was absolutely necessary. Now, someone did what he always wanted to do but didn't dare to do. The believer of the stars. Nast's face was slightly moved, his eyes fell on Hastur, and he said in a deep voice, "Are you really a believer of the stars?" "They all think I am. I really misjudged you." Nast took a deep look at Hastur, and then looked at Morley Abraham. "This news is not enough for you to live." "Yes, I know." Morley Abraham nodded and said with a smile, "I am ready to face death. I just want to know that the King of the Five Seas intends to deal with a deceiver, and he is also a believer of the stars." Nast smiled at the corner of his mouth. "Naturally, let the believer of the stars be my guest of honor." What? Morley Abraham was shocked and stunned, but before he could continue to say anything, his feet had begun to rot, revealing a skeleton as white as snow. Soon, a complete skeleton was laid on the deck. Seeing this scene, Ince Zangwill's pupils shrank slightly. He was thankful that it was not him who stood up to expose Hastur's identity. Sure enough, the good fortune of fate has always been with Count Hasta Campbell from Backland. This was obviously a dangerous encounter, but under the protection of fate, the King of the Five Seas not only had no intention of harming him, but also wanted to make him a guest of honor. Such treatment was in sharp contrast to the miserable situation he had been through. "You are the only one left, the defected archbishop." Ince Zangwill, who was named by Nast, sighed and said, "There is no conflict of interest between you and me, so why do you have to force me into a desperate situation? You fell into my net yourself." Ince Zangwill was silent for a while and said, "I am willing to give you a gift for today's offense." What gift can buy you a life? I can help you find a way to advance to a higher rank. Nast smiled without saying a word and slowly shook his head. It's not that he is unmoved, it's that he doesn't believe that Inz Zangul can help him do this. The first step to advance from Sequence 3 to Sequence 2 is that he must first surrender to a real Black Emperor, or be loyal to a king with a sound kingdom system. Then he became a duke who was canonized and recognized by the people of the kingdom from the bottom of their hearts. Finally, he must also possess a Sequence 2 extraordinary characteristic. This is the most difficult thing. Nowadays, only in the City of Hope in the Kingdom of Loen can powerful extraordinaries of this level exist. And he didn't dare to get close to Backland at all. High-level extraordinaries of the same sequence are mortal enemies. As long as he gets close to Backland, he will definitely be hunted by the Loen royal family, and then use his extraordinary characteristics to contribute to the growth of the Loen royal family. I learned a secret in Backland. The current Grand Duke of South Wales is the illegitimate son of the former Grand Duke of South Wales. Inz Zangul revealed another new news. He cooperated with the witch cult and learned many secrets of the Loen royal family. The former Archduke of South Wales. Nast narrowed his eyes and fell into a memory. He was the king of the 5 seas across the sea, and the former Archduke of South Wales was a fierce hero who guarded South Wales. They had many interactions. Without the help of the Loen royal family, he would not have been surpassed by him. Nast suppressed his memories and asked curiously, "Are you capable of plotting against an angel on Earth?" "This is my secret. Hand over your secrets and you can leave alive today." Nast's gaze was compelling and he was ready to attack with all his strength. "Do you have to force me to die at sea with your crew?" Inz Zangul was forced to a dead end. In his deep blue and nearly black eyes, a lightless darkness was slowly rippling. The surrounding dense lines filled his eyes, forming one strange and twisted symbol after another. Inz Zangul reveals a little bit of his mythical demeanor. At the same time, he also took out 008, the pen of Alzuhad, to guard against Nast's possible attack. On the sea, in Nast's home court, he had no hope of victory, but it was not difficult for him to drag a group of people to be buried with him. Especially since there are Nast's crew members nearby, including his first mate, second mate, third mate and other important people. This pen is very strange, it seems to have a great origin. Nast noticed the extraordinariness of 008, but couldn't see its true origin. "This is my biggest support along the way." Inz Zangul holds 008 in his hand tightly, ready to leave here with the power of 008 at any time. "Yeah?" Nast still chose to take action. The sky darkened instantly, and he pulled Inz Zangul into the spirit world. In the empty spiritual world, Nast stood alone on the bow of the Black Emperor with no crew around him. Inz Zangul's reaction was equally quick. He held 008 and quickly wrote on the clothes on his arm. Inz Zangul is in very good condition today and can effectively control his mythical creature form, so he decided not to make any reservations and try his best to get out of here. As the last stroke of 008 fell, the flesh and blood on his waist and ribs swelled and squirmed, and 4 arms covered with blood vessels grew. The arms were soon covered with white feathers. At the same time, Inz Zangul's teeth were pulled out one by one and became sharp, with many blurry, small faces embedded on the surface. In the end, Inz Zangul turned into a strange monster with 8 legs and white feathers lying in the void. This is the combination of night and the power of death. It is also the embodiment of Inz Zangul's strongest strength. On the ferry, Hasta, as the honored guest mentioned by Nast himself, enjoyed different treatment from ordinary passengers. Nast's second mate, Bird Mustang, known as the Viscount of Fear, accompanied him personally, saying that he was taking care of the captain's guest, but in fact he was afraid that Hasta would run away. Hasta had no intention of escaping, but just held Azishara and thought about the battle between Nast and Inz Zangul. He estimated that the King of the 5 Seas could not keep Inz Zangul, especially in the spirit world, where there were too many powerful mysterious creatures. With the specificity of 008, it was easy to attract them and disrupt the battle. The normal result was that Inz Zangul was seriously injured and left, and Nast returned without success. Is there anything different about the believers of the stars? Seeing that Hasta had not spoken, Bird Mustang took the initiative to talk. Asta looked up at the sky, and after a while he said, "The stars are watching everything." Bird Mustang trembled slightly, thought about it, and still didn't want to mention this topic again. He turned and asked, "You don't seem to be afraid of our captain at all." Because the stars are watching everything. There was no way to talk about this day, and Bird Mustang closed his mouth silently. After more than 10 minutes, the spirit world was torn apart, and Nast appeared driving the Black Emperor, causing a boiling cheer. Nast ignored them and walked straight to Asta, inviting him to the room to talk. As for the other passengers, they survived as captives. In the room, Nast took out a bottle of vintage wine and poured a glass for himself and Asta. At sea, we have long been unaccustomed to the taste of black tea. This wine is very good. Compared to the elven wine dug out from the depths of the sea and baptized by time, this wine is still a lot worse. The two talked briefly, and Nast waited for Asta to finish the first glass of wine, and his eyes gradually became sharp. How did you hide from my spying, the protection of the stars? Are you really a believer of the stars? They all say I am. You are very confident, calmer than the Archbishop. He has already escaped, right? You know I can't keep him? You can guess this result. The seal in his hand is not simple. It is called 008 by people in the church. Nest's pupils shrank slightly. The number 008 means that this is a level 0 seal. This level of seal is indeed capable of affecting an angel on earth. What Ince Zangul said before was not completely lying to him. You seem to know this seal very well. I have seen its powerful place. It always likes to write a series of coincidental scripts. Writing scripts. Nest quickly started to associate this, but didn't gain much. You don't seem to have a reason to let me go? Asta asked the most puzzled question. The performance of the King of the Five Seas surprised him. Not only did he not target him, but he also made him a guest of honor. The second mate who had spoken to him before seemed to be full of fear and even fear of the group of believers of the stars. Someone has spread the word that believers of the stars should be treated well. Who? A mysterious young man who came out of nowhere. He is very young, just a little older than you, and he is now the true uncrowned king of the entire sea. While speaking, Nast kept observing Asta's subtle expression. Although Asta hid his emotions very well, he still observed the change in Asta's eyes for a moment. They knew each other. It seems that the mysterious young man is also a believer of the stars. Uncrowned king. Is the sea so exciting now? Aren't you curious about the identity of the mysterious young man? Too much curiosity always leads to destruction. Is this a reminder to yourself not to delve into the matter of believers of the stars? Are all believers of the stars so difficult to deal with? No wonder the Church of the Seven Gods and other evil god organizations are looking for their whereabouts. This level of attention is unprecedented in the extraordinary world. At night, Hastur lived alone in a fairly luxurious single room. He sat on the bed holding Azishara, stroking Azishara's little head with one hand, while thinking about what Nast said today. Unexpectedly, he was treated so well by Nast today, thanks to the face of the high-dimensional overlooker. Treat the believers of the stars well. This sentence began to spread across the sea from the mouth of the high-dimensional overlooker. Now that he is the uncrowned king of the entire sea, his words are naturally very important. Even Nast, the king of the five seas, does not want to cause trouble, but chooses to make himself a guest of honor. Compared with the kindness of the fallen mother goddess, the high-dimensional overlooker's style of behavior is more pleasing. This is the correct way to release kindness. As for the fallen mother goddess, she has been completely blacklisted by Hastur, and even her believers are among the people targeted by Hastur. The Abraham family is divided into many branches, and it is difficult to completely eradicate them. But if there is time, the branch where Maury Abraham is located can be found through the Fate Spy and their hiding place. For now, he was just waiting for any movement from Mr. A. If he could control the unborn offspring of the evil god, then he would truly have a sharp knife that could walk in the darkness. Backland, North District. In the dead of night, a carriage with a waste bucket slowly approached the alley near St. Samuel Church from the street. He did not shy away from the patrolling police officers he met on the road. In the depths of the alley, in a three-story house, when the carriage with the waste bucket approached, 3 or 4 workers in ordinary clothes came out and unloaded the waste buckets from the carriage. When he reached the last floor, there was a dark coffin, which still exuded a faint fragrance, the smell of the essence extracted from the moon flower that the goddess of night liked. Since it was blasphemy, then blasphemy to the end. This was the genius idea of the crazy Mr. A. He planned to use this to hide the coffin in this location until the day of blasphemy came. The workers carried the coffin to the underground dark room, and then sealed the stone door tightly, prohibiting anyone from entering, including Mr. A himself. This is the Lord's will. No one can enter here before the day of blasphemy comes.
I didn't expect it to be so smooth tonight. This saves us a lot of preparation.
I heard that there was a sudden explosion at the nursing home, which attracted everyone's attention. The nursing home is really a weird place. Mr. A was just walking out of the underground dark room when he heard his men talking. His face darkened. It is forbidden to discuss any extraordinary things. Remember, you are just ordinary workers living here, and I am your landlord. There is nothing else. Yes. Mr. A did not say any more harsh words, but came to his own exclusive room, took out the statue of the miniature moderator from his arms, and began to pray silently. The task that the Lord gave him has been completed. Although there is still a distance from St. Samuel's Church, it is already quite close. If it is closer, there will often be clergy patrolling nearby. Here, the power of the night is obvious, which makes him feel very uncomfortable.
If it were not for the Lord's plan, he would never stay in such a place, not even for a moment.
The nursing home has become a sea of fire. The red flames illuminated most of the night sky, attracting countless people nearby to stop and watch. A large number of police officers set up a cordon to prevent ordinary people from entering. Klein, Leonard and others were all in the cordon, frowning as they looked at the nursing home surrounded by the sea of fire. When their team of 4 was dealing with the nursing home incident together, there was a mentally ill lunatic who said he could predict the future. Among the things he predicted, there was a prophecy about a big explosion in the nursing home. Now, a big explosion really happened in the nursing home. That person also predicted that a ghost ship would pass through the storm. In the delayed news sent back from the sea, there was a mysterious young man driving a ghost ship through the storm abyss, and also caused the fall of a big figure in the storm church. The incident of a meteor falling from the sky also happened not long ago. The church attached great importance to this matter, so they sent them to form a temporary team to continue to deal with this incident. According to the relevant police personnel, the cause of this explosion was indeed a gas pipeline leak. Hearing this reason, Klein and Leonard looked at each other in bewilderment. Sometimes when dealing with major and extraordinary events, they are always used to using this reason to explain everything to the outside world. Leonard was silent for a while and said, "Klein, I forgot to tell you something. The last time I investigated this nursing home, I had a dream at night after returning. It was a very weird dream. In the dream, I dreamed of the ghost ship that passed through the storm and a shadow whose appearance could not be seen clearly." Klein's heart trembled for no reason. He also had a strange dream. In the dream, there was a bright starry sky. He also told his dreams, and after comparing the time, they were all during the investigation of the nursing home. This means that they have successfully attracted the attention of a mysterious existence. Being noticed by a mysterious being can be a big deal or a small deal. Some mysterious beings just glance at you occasionally and then look away. They won't just stare at you. Some mysterious beings are more terrifying. The moment they notice you, they already regard you as prey or as a sacrifice. Many ordinary people who come into contact with mysterious events have these experiences, and their end is often miserable. No way. Leonard interrupted the thoughts that kept surging in his mind. We should be careful. The church attaches great importance to this matter. There must be something we don't know. You mean, the church knows who the mysterious being behind the nursing home is? Leonard asked in a low voice. Hush, let's not talk about these things, so as not to attract the attention of that mysterious being again. Klein's cautious attitude made Leonard nervous. It was not until dawn the next day that the fire in the nursing home was completely extinguished. After a half-day statistics in the morning, the death toll was 8, 17 people were severely burned, 26 people escaped from the nursing home in time, and 2 people were missing. Both Klein and Leonard focused their attention on the 2 missing persons, Sheriff Reed and his lover. They were also the focus of observation in this nursing home. This was definitely not a coincidental accident, but a deliberate act, with the purpose of helping Sheriff Reed and his wife escape from the nursing home. Leonard sighed and said, "It seems that we will be busy again. I hope everything goes well." Klein was not optimistic about this incident, so he could only ask the police to continue to find the real cause of the fire in the nursing home. He and Leonard went to ask the survivors of the fire last night to see if they could get some useful information. After another busy day, Klein and Leonard summarized an analysis of the nursing home accident report. There were indeed survivors who saw Sheriff Reed and his wife last night, and they said that the two of them could do magic and just passed through a mirror made of fire and light to leave the place. Mirror? Leonard was very familiar with this thing. The last time he entered Sheriff Reed's dream, he saw countless mirrors. Crossing the mirrors seemed to cross different worlds. If what the witnesses said was true, then there was an extraordinary factor behind Sheriff Reed and his wife leaving the nursing home, and it was most likely that mysterious person. Another witness said that the fire in the nursing home last night was not caused by a ruptured gas pipeline, but a large fireball suddenly exploded in the small yard near Sheriff Reed and his wife. The ignited fire spread to the gas pipeline, causing the entire nursing home to be engulfed in fire. Based on these 2 points, Klein and Leonard began to reason and analyze, and believed that this was most likely what happened. The large fireball that appeared out of thin air turned into a mirror surrounded by fire, leading Sheriff Reed and his wife to leave the nursing home, and then detonated, destroying the entire nursing home. Klein carefully read the confessions of the 2 witnesses and asked uncertainly, "Do you feel that there is something wrong?" "Well, if that's the case, how did these 2 witnesses survive? They should have died in the fire." "I think so too, but they don't look like they are lying." Leonard was silent for a while and said, "Could it be that part of the scene those 2 people saw was an illusion, and Sheriff Reed and his wife did not actually leave through the mirror surrounded by fire, but hid in the chaotic crowd last night to escape from the nursing home? Are you saying that Sheriff Reed and his wife are still in Backland? I just made a reasonable guess, and I'm not completely sure. The more I think about it, the more possible it seems. This can also explain why these 2 witnesses were able to survive." Klein's eyes lit up, and he began to mobilize police officers to conduct a detailed investigation of all nearby areas. On the sea, the Black Emperor. Hester was lying on a lounge chair, with a parasol on his left to block the gradually falling sunlight, and a small square table on his right, with a few bottles of fine wine and roasted dried fish on it. Ashera also followed him to enjoy the delicious dried fish, and occasionally made a few happy meows. Since chatting with Nast yesterday, Hester has enjoyed special treatment on the Black Emperor. As long as the request is not too rude, the crew on the Black Emperor will try their best to satisfy him. Hester really understood how famous the High Dimension Overlooker was in this sea during his conversation with them. Originally, there were 4 pirate kings in this sea. The one at the front was Nast, the king of the 5 seas, followed by the mysterious queen, the undead king, and the king of the Black Sea. At present, the undead king has become a subordinate of the High Dimension Overlooker, and Nast has also met the High Dimension Overlooker and publicly admitted that he is not his opponent. The king of the Black Sea was hiding and dared not show up, and most of his crew members were recruited by the High Dimension Overlooker. Only the mysterious Queen Bernadette is currently in the southern continent, just avoiding the edge of the high-dimensional overlord. Not only did the pirates suffer a great loss, but even the regular navy of the Kingdom of Loan was beaten several times by the high-dimensional overlord, contributing 2 ironclad ships to him. The Storm Church, which has always been rampant in the sea, has also been targeted by the high-dimensional overlords one after another, and is currently basically blocked in the storm abyss and dares not come out. The most legend about this uncrowned king is his speed of appearing and disappearing. Maybe he was still in the Dissy Bay in the morning, and suddenly appeared outside the storm abyss in the afternoon. Some people speculated that this was a master of some extraordinary item that could cross space. There were also speculations that the uncrowned king had the power to travel through time and space. There was also news from the Storm Church that the concept of space had no meaning in front of the uncrowned king. Hester showed great interest in this. The actions of the high-dimensional overlooker had always puzzled him. Hearing more about his deeds would help him understand his true character better. The only thing that worried him was that if the high-dimensional overlooker appeared in front of him at this moment, would he be able to see through his true identity? Hester thought about it again and again, and felt that with the strength of an incarnation of the high-dimensional overlooker, he could not see through his identity under the double disguise of the secrets of the night and the cover of fate. As long as he did not enter the Hall of Stars in front of him, he would not be able to discover him. Who would have thought that I would spend such a leisurely life on the Black Emperor? Hester drank another glass of wine and watched the sunset being swallowed by the sea. The sun always rises and falls like this, constantly repeating. Maybe one day, the sun sets today, and the sun that rises tomorrow will not be the same sun. Prin Port, formerly known as D-Link Port, was named in memory of the former Grand Duke of Southwell.
Not long after the current Grand Duke of Southwell took office, he renamed the port to Print Port. Currently, it is one of the 3 important ports in Southwell. To its south is the port of Barons in the southern continent.
Today, a medium-sized fishing boat sailed from the sea and arrived at Print Port. As soon as the fishing boat docked, there were bursts of excited and happy cheers from the cabin, but no one dared to come out of the cabin until the captain of the captain's room personally invited a young man out of the VIP room and respectfully sent him ashore.
Finally arrived in Southwell. It's really a bit hard along the way. Ashera, you must be tired of eating dried fish on the boat. Next, you can eat some vegetarian food. Meow. The young man was holding a small black cat with dark blue pupils in his arms.
When the young man walked away, the other passengers rushed out of the cabin, like a group of prisoners just released from a cage. In the southern continent, the war that had been brewing for more than half a year finally began to burn. West Balam and East Balam, who had always been at odds with each other, joined forces and launched a crackdown on the Seven Gods Church members and related forces from the northern continent under the slogan of restoring freedom and peace in the southern continent. The war burned mercilessly and soon spread to the entire southern continent.
The cause of the war was that the Eternal Sun Church discovered the Rose School's residence on an island.
As soon as the clergy of the Eternal Sun Church, who had been searching for a long time, found this place, they began to unite the forces of other churches and launched a fierce attack. At first, the Rose School retreated step by step and retreated to the deepest part of the island. Just when the members of the Seven Gods Church were about to flatten the island in one go, the center of the entire island cracked and a sun rose. When the sun floated into the sky, the dazzling light shone all over the island, and the members of the Seven Gods Church suffered heavy losses.
At the critical moment, the archbishops of the Eternal Sun Church actually summoned the gods.
An equally dazzling sun descended from the sky, and the 2 suns competed with each other, causing the nearby seawater to boil.
The aftermath of the confrontation turned into rounds of sky fire, sweeping across the entire coastline. The fishing villages and ports along the coast suffered heavy losses from the disaster of sky fire.
In addition, the 2 suns competed for glory, and the rapidly rising temperature turned into gusts of burning wind, burning from the coastline to the inland. The fire continued to spread, forming a terrifying mountain fire disaster.
The grain and cotton plantations were even more burned by the high temperature and spontaneously combusted.
The losses and impacts caused were too great. It was under such circumstances that East Balam and West Balam announced their cooperation to expel the Seven Gods Church together and return a peaceful land to the southern continent. The war began to spread. There are many different opinions about who won the Battle of the 2 Suns, and no one seems to be able to tell clearly. The last surviving member of the Seven Gods Church who participated in the battle kept silent about this matter. Some fishermen who happened to see the Battle of the 2 Suns once shouted that a sun fell into the deep sea, but they couldn't tell whether it was the sun that came out first or the sun that appeared later. On the southeast coast of the southern continent, the sky was still scorching hot, and from time to time there would be streams of fire falling and hitting the ground that had been burned to charcoal.
Bernadette looked up at the sky. The sun was still dazzling, but now there were 2 small suns fighting for its power and authority.
She had an indescribable shock and relief, fortunate that she could actually watch a battle for the authority of the sun from afar. Which existence could make the eternal blazing sun return empty-handed? Yes, there was no real winner in this battle of the 2 suns. One sun fell into the seabed, but another sun turned into a shadow and dissipated.
God's descent is only God's descent after all, not the eternal sun itself. Fortunately, it is not a real battle of gods, otherwise she would not even be qualified to watch the battle. Even if she is far away, she cannot bear that kind of power now. From her point of view, the real winner of this battle is the southern continent. Most of the elite members of the Rose School and the Seven Gods Church who went to the island were turned into ashes in the Battle of the 2 Suns, and not even a complete corpse was left. The Seven Gods Church, which lost most of its power, has lost its corresponding control over the land of the southern continent. Coupled with the joint counterattack of East Balam and West Balam, it is only a matter of time before it is completely driven out of the southern continent. I should leave here and return to the sea, Bernadette whispered. This is not only the guidance from the stars, but also her inner desire. Staying in the southern continent will only involve her in a meaningless war. Now there is a new uncrowned king on the sea,
recruiting members of major pirate groups everywhere, and his strength is growing. She should also return to the Dawn to take charge of the overall situation, so as to prevent her fleet from being swallowed up by the uncrowned king. Just as she was about to leave, a figure came to her side. This was a well-proportioned young man, wearing a white robe, bare feet, and his blonde hair was tied up with a golden headband. His smile was warm, and his eyes were like a sun brewing. Just looking at him, infinite warmth surged from the bottom of my heart. A senior figure of the Eternal Sun Church. Bernadette didn't know this young man, but from the aura he exuded, he was definitely a figure at the level of an archbishop. Bernadette said calmly, "The people of the Eternal Sun Church are not busy cleaning up the mess, but come here to find me. What do you want to do?" "I came here to ask a question. I may not answer." "How do you know that the remnants of the Rose School are hiding on this isolated island?" Bernadette's face was cold, and she sneered, "Do you think I colluded with the people of the Rose School and deliberately deceived you? You misunderstood. I am just interested in your source of information, which is a place that even the gods cannot see." The young man's tone was not impatient, even though he was talking about the gods. Bernadette did not answer the question directly, but asked curiously, "Who are you?" "You can call me Rose Hurley. I have never heard of this name. Is this your real name?" "You can also call me His Holiness the Pope of the Eternal Sun Church." Bernadette did not hide her surprise. She never thought that the Pope of the Eternal Sun Church would leave the Republic of Intis. Although she had not returned to her homeland for a long time, there were many people who stayed in Intis, but no one noticed that the Pope actually walked out of the sacred temple and appeared here as a young man. "I have no ill intentions. I just want to know a definite answer if you still think of Intis as your homeland." Bernadette was silent for a long time, and finally looked up at the sky, almost muttering, "When you look up at the starry sky at night, what else can you see besides the crimson moon?" Rose Hurley also looked up at the sky, as if it had turned from day to night. "Everything is under the gaze of the stars." Bernadette's lost tone made him clearly feel that the Pope was worried. "Bernadette, should I let you go? Don't make a decision that you will regret." "Alas, this world is too chaotic." Rose Hurley sighed, put away all his worries, and said with a smile, "When do you plan to go back and take a look?" "When I should go back. Just like when I was a child, as rebellious as ever." Before Bernadette could react, Rose Hurley disappeared like a bubble in the sun. "Impossible. The Pope of the Eternal Sun has only been on the throne for about 50 years. He should be younger than herself. How could he see himself when he was a child?" All the words just now were not as shocking as the last sentence. "It seems that I should find a chance to go back and take a look. After all, I left too hastily at the beginning, and there are still many things that I haven't figured out." Bernadette came to the seaside, tapped her fingertips on the sea, and a submarine appeared on the sea. This was her favorite sea navigation tool, the Nautilus. Inside a luxurious manor, on the second floor, inside a study room. Alfred Hall was writing a letter to send home. "Dear sister, please forgive your second brother for not being able to return to Backland to attend your coming-of-age ceremony, but I think that with your excellent character and perfect appearance, you will still be Backland's most shining gem. Being absent from this important day in your life is also a very painful thing for me. I wanted to return to Backland several times before the year before, but the situation here changed too fast, and it was urgent for me to stay and deal with everything. Affairs. I think with your wisdom and heart, you will definitely forgive your second brother who is far away in the southern continent and is suffering from the war." Yes, the war broke out. Just today, most of the organizations in East Balam and West Balam have united to target members of the Church of the Seven Gods. In this war, their power has the upper hand. I believe that the war in the southern continent will be very serious. It will subside soon. But this does not mean that the war will end here. Driving the power of the Church of the Seven Gods out of the southern continent is just the first step in the flames of war. War is like a machine that keeps moving forward. It will not stop until its energy is completely exhausted. Moreover, the damage done to the southern continent this time has completely angered the ordinary people there. Only when the anger in their hearts can be extinguished can the war truly end. You don't need to worry about your second brother. He is fine and safe. He is just unable to return to Backland for the time being." After Alfred Hall finished writing the letter, he asked the butler to find a way to send the letter back to Backland. "I know it's difficult, but I think the port is not completely closed yet and this is the last chance to send a letter." "Yes. The steward personally took 2 manor guards to the port. As soon as I arrived at the port, I was stunned by the dense crowd in front of me. Looking around, there is no end in sight. The war has begun, and many businessmen who came to the southern continent to do business, with their families, were rushing to leave here at the beginning of the war to avoid being involved in the war. Everyone, go back. Today's ferry tickets have been sold out. There is not even a standing ticket left. Although the person in charge of the port was loudly persuading and asking people to evacuate the crowd gathered here, it still had no effect. Today's ferry tickets are sold out, but isn't there still tomorrow? Many people choose to stay where they are, hoping to spend the day here so they can buy ferry tickets early tomorrow. Fortunately, we have our own way. The housekeeper just looked at it for a while, then walked around to a 2-story house. After some bargaining, he finally spent 50 gold pounds to send the letter back to Backland. According to the person in charge there, at this time, if you want to take a boat back to Backland, an ordinary boat ticket costs at least 200 gold pounds, and you need to have the connections to buy it. If those people outside don't find other ways to work around, they will be stuck here as long as the war lasts. They all want to leave the southern continent when the war starts. Do the rulers who manage this place really think of this? 2 days before the war started, they had already suspended some ferries and sent personnel to guard important ports. They would never allow the wealth belonging to the southern continent to be brought back to the northern continent. Port Pullen, South Wales. In the VIP room on the 2nd floor of a pretty good hotel, Hester took the mirror out of his arms and placed it on the table. Miss Sharon, we have left the Black Emperor and arrived at a port in South Wales. You can come out. This period of time was really hard for Sharon. In order not to be discovered by the King of the Five Seas, she had been hiding in the mirror. Although he later became a distinguished guest on the Black Emperor, Sharon still had no idea of coming out of the mirror, so Hester could only keep the mirror close to his body. Chapter 258. The Misfortune of Ince Zangul. During the time when he was carrying Miss Sharon, Hester had been thinking about a question. Miss Sharon had been staying in the mirror for so many days. Didn't she need to solve her personal physiological problems? He knew that Sharon's current sequence was a wraith, but her essence was still a human body, right? Humans couldn't photosynthesize. According to the law of conservation of energy, well, she also needed to replenish energy and nutrition regularly, right? He could only think about this question silently in his heart, so as not to do such a stupid thing as asking in person. If the object was marriage, Hester wouldn't worry so much, and might even be interested in dissecting it. Give it back to you. As soon as Sharon came out of the mirror, she handed Hester a spell covered with various distorted timelines. This was when the Black Emperor approached the ferry. Hester gave it to her specifically, saying that she only needed to carry it with her to cover up her related fate and allow her to hide in the mirror more safely. Things really developed as Hester predicted. She hid in the mirror and did conceal the perception of the King of the Five Seas. Even if she hid herself in Hester for a few days, her whereabouts were still not exposed. This thing is too precious. Hester did not take the fate spell, but put it back in Sharon's palm and smiled. When I gave it to you before, I said that this fate spell is equivalent to the employment fee for you to accompany me to South Wales. I'm not that valuable. Whether it is valuable or not is decided by my employer. No, then I can extend the employment time until you think it is enough to repay the value of this fate spell. With this fate spell on you, you can do some things more conveniently, and it will be more difficult for the people of the Rose School of Indulgence to find your traces. Seeing that Sharon was still hesitating, Hester added this sentence. Okay. Sharon finally put away the fate spell. This thing is very useful to her. With her resentful soul ability, she can hide from many high-sequence strongmen. Miss Sharon, do you need to eat something tonight to replenish your nutrition? Well, I don't want to eat fish for the time being. In this regard, Azishara is the same. She needs to eat some vegetables recently to balance her nutrition. She is now a few pounds heavier than when she just left Backland. Meow? Azishara's eyes widened, and she looked down at her slender figure. She was obviously thinner than at home. Don't look at it, your belly is about to fall off. Asta gently rubbed Azishara's belly a few times, and handed Azishara to Sharon, and he went downstairs to order something to eat in the room. Sharon held Azishara and sat down on the chair next to the window. She lowered her head to help Azishara carefully smooth the black and shiny hair that was messed up by Asta. Meow? Azishara licked Sharon's fingers and looked at her with her head slightly tilted up. Sharon didn't speak, her expression was much gentler than before, and it seemed that the ice in her eyes melted into water and flowed through. Downstairs, Asta ordered the menu and wanted to go back to the room to wait, but he happened to hear people here talking about the coastal defense of South Wales. They didn't have the courage to make suggestions to the current Grand Duke of South Wales, but they still had the courage to stay here and make suggestions under the influence of a little alcohol, and it was very big. Although some of their suggestions were not mature, they were also remarkable. Asta listened quietly for a while and asked the boss here for a map of South Wales. This map only had a few place names marked on it, without even a rough outline. The boss whispered to him to explain the reason. The more detailed the map, the less likely it was to be sold. It would be more convenient to find a live map directly. He asked about the relevant candidates, and the boss smiled and recommended someone to him. Asta paid the boss £1 gold for consulting fees, and the boss smiled and recommended another person to him. This time, Asta did not give him another £1, and left in the boss's surprised and regretful eyes. Back to the room, the ordered dishes have been delivered. Snap! Hasta slapped Azishara's little paw that was secretly reaching for the dried fish, and smiled as he picked up 2 green spinach for her. Meow? Azishara's eyes widened, and Hasta picked up another broccoli for her. Azishara was so angry that she waved her cat paw, jumped off the table, and landed on Sharon's thighs, lying down with her eyes closed, with a heroic spirit of fasting. It's not good to be picky about food, right, Miss Sharon? Hasta smiled and added a spoonful of carrot cubes to Sharon, and then silently placed a piece of tender beef ribs on his plate under Sharon's cold eyes. In the evening at the port, the setting sun just hung over the sea in the distance, and the soft sea breeze brought heavy moisture, which was very comfortable on people's faces. It was the busiest time for dock workers, and the boats that went to the sea to fish were constantly returning. Hasta was holding Azishara, with Sharon by his side, walking through the street and heading to the clothing store here. The dozen or so sets of clothes and canes and other daily necessities that he brought from Backland were all lost in the explosion of the steam train. The things that he bought again were crushed into powder by the King of the Five Seas in the cabin of the ferry. 2 hours later, the sunset had already disappeared, and the crimson moon began to appear. Hasta and Sharon came out of the clothing store, Hasta carrying a suitcase in one hand, and Sharon also carrying one. Ashera, who was not held by anyone, lay on Hasta's right shoulder, secretly rejoicing. Fortunately, the clothes she had customized for the new year had been burned, and she didn't need to wear those things that bound her body. It didn't understand why its master and Miss Sharon had to wear clothes. At night, on the dark sea, the waves surged, smashing the light of the crimson moon. In the waves that were getting stronger and stronger, there were 2 empty oak barrels tied side by side with ropes, floating on the sea. On top of the 2 oak barrels, Inz Zangwil lay on them with a tired face. His originally not fair skin had been soaked by the seawater and turned white, and his fingers and toes were all bald. The clothes and hair on his body were never dry. Fortunately, he had seen the beacon of hope. Not far away, a tall lighthouse was guiding the ships that had not yet returned. Inz Zangwil raised his head slightly and showed a forced smile. His unfortunate fate finally ushered in a turnaround. The last time he fought with the King of the Five Seas, he used O8's ability to weave a script to attract 2 powerful spiritual creatures, and finally successfully escaped from the spiritual world in the big melee. His foothold was the vast ocean. He fell into the sea just after leaving the spiritual world. He had to swim hard to get away from it. Fortunately, there was an oak barrel floating on the sea, so he finally had a tool to save effort after swimming for half a day. But only 1 oak barrel was not enough. He could only hold it with both hands, half lying on it, and his lower body was still immersed in the seawater. And without a paddling tool, he could only move forward in the direction of the ocean current. Fortunately, on the 3rd day, he picked up another oak barrel on the sea, and finally got his lower body out of the seawater. Although the posture of lying on 2 oak barrels like a toad is not elegant, it is the most comfortable way for him. He also used 008 to write a script about a ship passing by and rescuing him from the sea. However, the script he was waiting for never came out, and he could only drift on the sea. He knew that 008 was deliberately taking this opportunity to kill him. He was in an incomplete state and could not compete with 008 for the ability to write scripts, He could only fight hard and try not to let 008 take this opportunity to write him to death. He also thought about traveling through the spirit world to leave the current predicament, but the two spirit world creatures that were attracted stayed nearby. It is safer to stay in the real world than to return to the spirit world. Although the situation is difficult, there is no danger to life. As an extraordinary person, his physique has been strengthened to a certain extent during his promotions, otherwise he would definitely not be able to withstand the sun during the day and the heavy waves at night. Fortunately, fate did not abandon him. Following the movement of the ocean current, he was not swept into the uninhabited sea, but was about to arrive at a port with a watchtower light. In the second half of the night, In's Zangwill had come to a place 500 meters away from the coastline, but the surging waves could not send him ashore. Instead, they kept pushing him away, making him drift farther and farther on the oak barrel. At this time, he had to abandon his savior who had depended on him for several days, and adopted a primitive swimming method to fight against the waves. Unfortunately, his perseverance had no audience. When the sun began to rise at the junction of the sea and the sky in the distance, the surging waves returned to calm. In's Zangwill was finally able to swim to the beach. For a moment, he felt the urge to cry. It turned out that the feeling of standing on the ground was so beautiful. After barely leaving the beach soaked in seawater and reaching a higher point, he stopped his difficult steps, lying on his back on the beach with his exhausted body, his chest rising and falling, and breathing heavily. In's Zangwill tilted his head slightly, looking at the orange-yellow sun, with a satisfied smile on his face after surviving the disaster. On the coastline, Hastur opened the window facing the sea, letting the rising sun shine in. Sharon, who had rested in front of the mirror for a night, also came out of the mirror, picked up Ashera, who was lazily lying on the bed, and came to the window to enjoy the magnificent scenery of the sea and sky. "Ms. Sharon, good morning." Hastur's head poked out of the window of the next room, smiling and greeting him. "Mr. Hastur, good morning." The sunlight hit Sharon's face, as if she was showing a faint smile, above the gray fog. The weekly tarot club was held again. Klein sat in the first seat, flipping through the 3 Roussel diaries submitted by Miss Justice and Mr. Hanged Man. Miss Justice's 2 Roussel diaries mostly contained content about Roussel's romantic affairs. Fortunately, there were always a few sentences of extraordinary knowledge that looked very high-end. After reading Roussel's diary, Klein signaled that they could communicate. The first to speak was Alger, the Hanged Man. "The war in the southern continent has broken out. The ports in the southern continent have been sealed off, and no ships are allowed to travel." The war broke out? Audrey and Furs were not prepared for this to happen. Wasn't it just after the Chinese New Year? How could the war suddenly break out? Klein nodded and said, "It's only a matter of time." There have been rumors within the church that the war will start after the Chinese New Year. Will the war affect the kingdom of Loan? Furs asked the question she cared about most. She didn't have much idea about war, especially the war in the southern continent. "I don't know, it's hard for me to get first-hand information about the south continent." Alger shook his head and answered. Audrey, who gradually recovered, pursed her lips and said calmly, "Mr. Hanged Man, do you know the reason for the outbreak of this war?" 2 suns appeared in the south continent, causing almost devastating blows to fishing villages, towns and plantations in coastal areas, which aroused the anger of the residents of the south continent. Alger answered with fear in his eyes. "This is the latest information sent back by the surviving clergy of the Storm Church in the south continent, which happened to be handed over to the Storm Church through his hands. 2 suns, there are too many meanings in it, plus the crazy behavior of the Eternal Blazing Sun Church some time ago, which has aroused many people's speculation. Although they are both the Seven Gods Church, the relationship between the Storm Church and the Eternal Blazing Sun Church is not good, and there is even a hint of hatred and hostility. So some members of the Storm Church speculated with malicious intent that there might be something wrong with the sun in the sky. This is a disrespectful speculation, but the church's senior staff did not correct this trend of thought. According to his long-term observation of the church's senior staff, if he did not come forward to correct it directly, it would mean that this guess was very close to reality, and the Storm Church was ready to confront the Eternal Sun Church head-on. At this time, Alger inevitably thought of what Mr. Fool had said meaningfully. The sun's brilliance began to dim. Did Mr. Fool already know that there was a problem with the sun at that time? Alger lowered his head even lower, his expression became more respectful, and his whole body was trembling with nervousness. He was afraid. but he also had a sense of pleasure in violating taboos. That was the supreme god. How could there be two suns? Derek, who had been silent all the time, spoke up. The sun is a symbol of authority. There can only be one controller. It is impossible for two suns to compete with each other. Unless, there are other gods who are trying to seize the authority of the sun. Derek opened and closed his lips tremblingly and gave his own guess. In the myths and legends of their Silver City, the creator once took back the authority held by elves, giants, and dragons, and even gave part of the authority to the angels sitting under him. In those mythological wars, there were rough records about the struggle for power. This was the knowledge he had learned from studying the mythological history of Silver City during this period. Fighting for the power of the sun? Boom! This sentence swept through Audrey and Fur's minds like a hurricane. They had never thought that a war in the southern continent would involve the high gods. Doesn't that mean that the war of gods is about to begin? Or, has the war of gods begun? Audrey, who had learned historical knowledge better, clenched the 5 fingers of her right hand into a fist, and her whole body was tense. In history, at the end of the transition of every era, it seems that large-scale wars will occur. Sometimes, the shadow of gods can be found in the history of the change of times. For example, the last era, the 4th era. In the Church's scriptures, there is a record of a pale disaster. It is said that the gods came forward to quell the disaster and ushered in the stable development of the 5th era. And now, there is already this sign. Mr. Fool, who was sitting in the first seat and had always maintained a mysterious and omniscient image, was also constantly thinking about the matter of fighting for the authority of the sun. He had already obtained a lot of mystical knowledge from Russell's diary, such as adjacent extraordinary paths can be replaced with each other and are mortal enemies. For example, in the Inns Zangwill incident, it was confirmed that the death path and the dark path were 2 adjacent paths. Then, the sun path should also have its adjacent paths. It is definitely impossible for the sun path to give birth to 2 true gods, and it is impossible for extraordinary people in the same path to be able to fight for the authority of the sun. Only true gods in adjacent extraordinary paths will fight for the authority of the sun. The so-called 2 suns are better said to be 2 gods, each sending down an incarnation. One of them wanted to seize the authority of the sun, and the eternal blazing sun wanted to defend his authority, so the 2 sides started a fierce battle for this. Klein's thoughts gradually became clear in his mind, and he began to speculate which extraordinary path could be adjacent to the sun path. Finally, his eyes fell on Mr. Hanged Man. The Storm Church has always been hostile to the eternal blazing Sun Church. Is it because of the adjacent paths? That is to say, the true God who takes action against the eternal blazing sun may be the Lord of Storms. He considered his words, looked at the Hanged Man Alger, and said in a calm tone, "Extraordinaries on adjacent extraordinary paths can replace each other at high levels, so they are mortal enemies of each other." Alger noticed the gaze cast by Mr. Fool, and his heart trembled. Could this be a reminder to himself that the storm pathway and the sun pathway are 2 adjacent extraordinary paths? This also means that the Lord of Storms may be involved in the fight for the authority of the sun. As soon as this idea came up, Alger hurriedly suppressed this disrespectful suspicion and kept silently reciting the creed of the Storm Church with you, waiting for him. Seeing Alger's reaction, Audrey and Forsey seemed to realize something, and a storm was also set off in their minds. Derek's expression was very calm. In their extraordinary course in Silver City, there was a mention of an adjacent path. After a brief silence, Alger changed the topic and mentioned the latest news that happened on the sea recently. For example, what amazing deeds did the uncrowned king perform? The young uncrowned king of the sea. Klein recalled the dream encounter that Leonard told him, and that Leonard also felt the breath of the sea when he spied on Sheriff Reed's dream. Could it be that the uncrowned king who suddenly appeared is the mysterious existence hidden behind Sheriff Reed and his wife? Calculating the time, we can almost match them. The next step is the trading process, but most of them have little gain. This made Klein realize that he needed to attract new members in order to maintain the enthusiasm and transaction value of the Tarot Club members. May the sun rise as usual tomorrow. Mr. Fool left his last meaningful words to end this week's tarot session. Backland, the home of Earl Hall. After Audrey left the tarot meeting, she just sat in the room. It wasn't until Susie reminded her that she recovered from the shocking news. She knelt down, stroked Susie's head, and murmured, "I really hope Mr. Hester is still in Backland, so that I can go to him to discuss some things. Woof. It's okay, I just felt a little lonely for a while. Woof. Thank you, Susie, I know you'll always be there for me. Woof. Susie wags her tail happily. In the underground ruins of Tudor, in a dark and dilapidated room, on 3 chairs of different styles, 3 figures were entangled with each other.
I smell the smell of war. I think we should leave this place full of stinky memories. Of course, if you develop a rare affection for this place, I can allow you to stay here for a few more days. Oh, the prey has arrived. A war without the Red Priest can only be regarded as children's playhouse.
Tisk, when it comes to playing house, you two can make a perfect couple, but I just don't know which one of you is a boy and which one is a girl. Shut up, Medici, you are a bastard who was born without a gender. Are you worthy of talking to us about men and women? Ha ha ha, I just saved you the trouble of changing from female to male. The unbridled and flamboyant laughter echoed throughout the room, but the people who were struggling to pull away the dirt and gravel outside did not hear the laughter. Rafter pound, he is dreaming of restoring his family's glory. Wow! Suddenly, the earth and rocks collapsed in front of him, and he hurriedly stepped back. When the smoke and dust dissipated, the underground passage that had been difficult to dig was already in front of him. It's the great ancestors who are protecting me. He suppressed his excitement, wiped the soil on his thighs a few times, and cleaned the soil between his fingernails. Then he arranged his clothes, smoothed out the wrinkles and mood, and then started to enter along the underground passage. Inside a huge underground palace.
Soon, he opened the door of hope that contained the treasure of the family's rise, Southwell County, Poulin Port. At Viscount Stedham's house, Inns Zangwill finally took a hot bath, changed into a new set of clothes, had a delicious dinner, and rested on the warm big bed. The experience at sea in the past few days has sharpened his mind again. He couldn't help but think of a sentence that Russell once said, "Everything that can't defeat me will make me stronger." This is his most real feeling now. Bang, bang. There was a knock on the door, which made Inns Zangwill, who wanted to sleep well until dawn, open his unhappy eyes and a slight chill on his face. He finally left the bed and went to open the door. Standing at the door was a middle-aged man in his early 40s with a protruding belly, 8 diamond rings on his 10 fingers, and half of his head was bald. Viscount Stedham was also a nobleman who took him in to live here. He couldn't be called a kind-hearted person who rescued people in distress, but he just happened to know him and asked for his help. Under 08's arrangement, he naturally saw me in the street, and then warmly invited me to his home. Well, I came to see if you still need anything. Viscount Stedham smiled shyly, rubbed his hands restlessly, and his eyes were erratic. It was obvious that he came to ask me for help, but he was afraid of his current reputation. Inns Zangwill said with a stern face, "Is there anything I can help you with? If not, then leave and don't disturb my rest." Can I go into the room and talk? Inns Zangwill made way and watched his fat and bloated body squeeze into the narrow door. He also muttered that the door was too small and he would replace it tomorrow. After entering the room, Stedham sat on the chair first, but felt uncomfortable, then got up and sat on the bed. His big butt moved twice, and showed a satisfied smile. Seeing him defile the bed he had just rested on, Inns Zangwill felt even more uncomfortable. "Can I tell you now? I know you are a powerful Beander, and I also know that you are being hunted down. I invited you to my home because of our past friendship. Of course, I am not a person who likes to repay favors, but I just have something bothering me recently." Inns Zangwill did not speak, but motioned Viscount Stedham to continue. Viscount Stedham raised his head slightly, and his right index finger stroked the 4 diamond rings on his left hand one by one. "Yesterday evening, I was strolling on the street and happened to see a pretty girl. I was very attracted to her and wanted to invite her to my home, but there was a young man next to her who beat up the person I sent and kicked me to the ground. I was entrusted by the Grand Duke to guard this port for so many years, but this is the first time I have been humiliated like this on the street. I am as proud as the Grand Duke, and the honor of the nobles cannot be insulted. Of course I can send the garrison at the port to save my face, but this is too laborious. Fortunately, I happened to meet you. I know you have a way to invite the girl to my home and make the young man disappear." Inns Zangwill listened to him silently, his eyes full of sarcasm. "What about inviting a girl to your home? This is clearly because he is attracted by her beauty. With such a fat body, he is not afraid of squeezing people flat, thinking about that shiver all day long. You should help me with this, right? Do you know the origin of that girl?" "I don't know.
She is not a local, but a foreigner who just came to Southwell County. A foreigner who just came to Southwell County. Ins Zangwill subconsciously became alert. Could that girl be a member of the witch cult? When they left Backland, they were also going to the South Continent. According to the time, they should have arrived in Southwell County before him. But it's not right. If they were really members of the witch cult, this fat pig would have died in bed. Seeing that Ins Zangwill was hesitant to speak, Viscount Stedham said in a deep voice, "The ferry to the South Continent has been suspended. You need a private ferry to go there, and I can help you do it quietly. This condition is very tempting. Of course, I have always been very generous to my friends." Viscount Stedham laughed, and the diamond ring on his hand was very dazzling. What does that young man look like, and what are his specific characteristics? Ins Zangwill felt that it was better to be cautious, and asked another question. Viscount Stedham tried hard to recall, and then he said, "The young man is quite handsome, and there is a little black cat lying on his shoulder." Little black cat? Ins Zangwill caught the sensitive word and asked tentatively, "Does he have dazzling blonde hair and a Backland accent?" "Yes, you know him." "Yes, I do." "Your friend?" Viscount Stedham's face had turned ugly. "No, we are enemies." "Ha ha ha, that's good." Viscount Stedham's face eased and a satisfied smile appeared on his face, but before he finished speaking, Ins Zangwill in front of him had already grabbed his throat. In his unbelievable eyes, strangled to death. Why offend him when you can offend anyone else? Ins Zangwill murmured, glanced at the pile of meat lying on the bed in disgust, and wiped his slightly greasy palms with the quilt. "Every time I meet him, he always brings misfortune to me. I'd better leave here as soon as possible." Ins Zangwill sighed helplessly. He just wanted to find a place to take a good rest, but he still encountered something related to Hastur. As 008 said, fate begins to converge. If he were a tributary, then Hastur would be the source of his destiny, and he would inevitably be involved in it. He didn't stay in the room longer, packed up his things, and just turned around to leave through the window. Viscount Stern, who was lying dead on the bed, suddenly opened his eyes and came to life. He stretched out his thick arms and hugged his waist fiercely. The strength is great, and it is simply not something a living person can exert. Ins Zangwill felt that his waist was about to be crushed, his face was suffocating, and his heart was about to be ejected from his throat due to the squeeze. Requiem. He tried to appease the ghost of Viscount Stern, but to no avail. He quickly opened a portal next to him, trying to summon powerful spiritual creatures to help him get out of trouble. But the surrounding space seems to be blocked, and his portal cannot attract spiritual creatures. He had no choice but to reveal his mythical form with all his strength. The flesh and blood all over his body swelled and squirmed, growing into 4 arms covered with blood vessels. The arms were soon covered with white feathers. The powerful force broke free from the restraints at once, and Viscount Stein's body exploded into pieces. The fierce sound caused a burst of noisy footsteps. Ins Zangwill, who knew that there were still people watching him secretly, did not dare to end his mythical form. He could only lie forward, and like a magic wolf, he quickly rushed towards the window, and suddenly jumped onto the roof of the next door. At the same time, one arm took out 008 from his arms and began to write on his clothes. Ins Zangwill is very lucky today. His enemies are always in a state of abnormal performance. Because of a momentary mistake, they let Ins Zangwill escape from this encirclement. At this time, the dark night sky suddenly became brighter, and a large fireball fell like a meteor towards the place where Ins Zangwill was. This was originally his favorite move, but now it was used against him by others. The meteor deviated from the course and passed by the lucky Ins Zangwill. 008 wrote such a paragraph again. The fireball hit Ins Zangwill's right shoulder, and the scorching heat directly scorched his shoulder, and there was a faint aroma of barbecue. Boom! The fireball hit a room and exploded suddenly. In the sky, the shadows of fireballs appeared again. Ins Zangwill's scalp was numb and he didn't dare to stay any longer, so he hurriedly hid in the spirit world. The powerful spiritual creature that was previously attracted by 008 only took a few breaths to catch up to Ins Zangwill. He fled a distance in a panic, and then returned to reality from the spirit world. At the same time, 008 wrote, powerful spirit world creatures eventually lost the whereabouts of Ins Zangwill because they were unable to refer to the coordinates of reality. Returning to reality, Ins Zangwill used 008 to write down relevant sentences that the secret pursuer could not catch up with him. After doing all this, he was exhausted and ended his severely damaged mythical form.
Just now, in order to get rid of the two powerful spirit world creatures, his mythical form was almost torn to pieces. In the end, he finally managed to escape from the spirit world at the cost of 2 arms. In addition, he was injured by the King of the Five Seas before and has been drifting on the sea. If he maintains his mythical form, he will either self-destruct and die, or he will completely lose control and become a monster. It should be safe for now, right? Ins Zangwil was breathing heavily, as if he was constantly wandering between this life and the next.
Don't worry, it's safe for the time being, but it's only for the time being.
A voice sounded from in front of him, and Ins Zangwil raised his eyes to look at the person.
A handsome young man with blonde hair was looking at him with a smile. Hasta Campbell. The nemesis of your own destiny. 008 also cannot arrange the special existence of the script. He didn't expect that he would meet the other party at this time. For more thrilling fanfiction stories like this, check out my channel Fanfic Audiobook. Dive into epic adventures, mysterious realms, and legendary journeys brought to life through immersive storytelling. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more amazing audiobooks.